So welcome to the session today. My name's Alan Laframboise. I'm here with Raul, and we're going to present to you about building beautiful interactive mapping applications with ArcGIS Basemaps services. So I think we often always forget, or sometimes we forget, how much we can do just with basemaps to build out amazing applications. So that's what we're going to try to show you today. We're going to try to show you a number of tips and tricks and take you through this process. So please fill out the feedback for the application for this particular session, please, before you're done today. Our agenda is to look at the capabilities of Basemaps, what we can do with various services that are available. We're going to focus a lot on vector tile customization, which really brings the most opportunities to us in the web browser using the JavaScript SDK. Blending effects, 3D mapping apps, all kinds of envisioning things we haven't even really thought about before, I think. And then there's a number of resources that we're going to show you, and hopefully you'll be able to get the QR code near the end for all of the sample code, because it will all be made available. So we're going to go through stuff pretty quickly. There's going to be a lot of apps that Raul's going to show and share, and we have a great repository set up. So if you wait until the end, get that QR code, then you're guaranteed to get all of the software that we're going to show today. Okay. Without further ado, yeah, I guess it's my turn. So I had this idea of just basemap magic. So what could we do just with basemaps today and integrate them well with the client SDK to see how we can extend and build better applications. So we'll start with this. So probably not our most favorite basemap in the world, or depends on what you're doing, right? Maybe people like the light gray. It definitely shows your data really well over top of it. But what I want to do is build this application with you guys to show you how we can enhance it. So first things first, in the JavaScript SDK, as you guys probably know, they have this nice gallery picker, and we can go through the different styles. So this isn't anything new, I think most of us. So we can maybe just pick 2 or 3 here. So there's streets, here's navigation, and we'll go down to one of my favorite ones, which is outdoor. Okay, so what's the number one rule when building an application? Obviously, picking the right base map for the job, and that depends on the use case for the application. And the other things you have to keep in mind is the locality, and that really means the extent that everything will be rendered at. So let me change that information for the map that's rendered. And I'm going to change from light gray to outdoor, because it seems like, well, at least the one I want to talk about today. We'll refresh, we'll go back, take a look at the app. All right, so this should be something you're familiar with, or some place you're familiar with, because we're all sitting here today. So this is outdoor, again, one of my favorite base maps, just because of all the variety. You see the contours, you can see trails. You have 3D buildings too, at least not 3D buildings, but the base map of buildings. So let's actually make a few more edits here. So what I want to do is change this map just using the SDK. So this is actually nice, because what we can do is change the entire mapping application just by changing the dynamics of the map. So change this to a scene. So this means it's going to be 3D. When we go back to the application, then we have this more immersive experience. So this isn't anything new to most folks here. And this is like really a base map and a design for a very specific application when you need this very immersive effect in front of you. But what I wanted to show you is, because the outdoor layer doesn't have 3D buildings on it, or anything that's really protruding and showing us like the landscape and how the city might render and so forth. What we can do is we can actually go to the Living Atlas, and the Living Atlas has a 3D buildings layer. It's been around for a little while, so we can turn that on.
Can you increase the font size a little bit? I think maybe a little bit small.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me do that. There we go. So I'm just turning on those features here. We'll go back to the application. So now what we see is we have 3D buildings rendered, so you can see the difference in the style. And this is something that we're going to, or one of the main points we're going to make today, is that base map layers can be composed of multiple layers. And this isn't a new thing. It's a collection, okay? So it's called Basemap, but it's actually plural. So we can treat it that way. And that's what we're doing here. So we'll turn those buildings on, and then I have this little tilt button that I built here just to kind of give us like a better view. So here we can see the 3D buildings being added to this vector base map. And then again, this is the outdoor base map. So this map's coming along. It's gaining a little bit more beauty, I guess, along the way. What I can do is turn on the styling. So this is a renderer now for that same layer, for the 3D buildings layer. And it's showing the height measurement by color. And this is in meters. So here we can see this actually brings even more information to us, as we can see. Now, because this is actually a 3D scene layer, and that's the buildings layer, then we can actually tap and we can actually have an interactive experience. So base maps can provide interaction too, although typically they don't, but we can actually have them do that by adding these interactive layers. The last piece to the puzzle is maybe going a little bit further, changing the base map to something like imagery. And this is a whole interesting set of things are happening here because we have semi-transparent colored three-dimensional structures. So this isn't photorealistic. This is more like structural realistic is the way to think about it. But for doing this in just a few lines of code, you can take a 2D gray base map layer like we were just looking at and then transform that to something like this. All right, so we just want to kick off the session with this one demo. We have all kinds of really cool stuff coming up. We're going to show blending modes and all kinds of crazy vector stuff coming up. So, all right, you ready?
Yep, I am.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a few slides I stole from John Nelson because I think, yeah, he was right by telling me that we are all cartographers at some point because we always, when we build an app, we need to pick Basemap, right? So, oh, sorry. And here, what I wanted to make is the difference between the base map, where the base is the important part of the word, and the base map. And there is a difference when we are talking about base maps and base maps. So what is that? As you can see in this picture, we are talking about base maps when we have a clean plate where we can put food or data over it, right? That's where we find when we take this light gray type of style base map. And then we have, on the other hand, those beautiful base maps that are crowded of information, like the satellite or the OpenStreetMap side, right? That where there are more challenges if we want to display data on top of that. So I just wanted to make the point that it's so important when we are building a base map that we start from the right base layer. Small disclaimer, we are not going to be focusing on that overlaying data that can be displayed on the base map. For that, in case anyone doesn't know, there is a data visualization chapter on the developer side that covers a lot of the topics in there. Now we're going to start talking about the very, very quick overview on the base maps services capabilities, because this is introductory session, so we want to make sure everyone is on the same page. So probably, as all of you know, we have provided already over 50 ready-to-use styles that you can use as your base layers if you want. These base maps are, work on, as I'll just show, in 3D, in 2D, in mobile, in web. So there's plenty of styles to be used. At the same time, these services also provide a few capabilities, like the possibility to change the language label. I realized recently that some people wasn't aware that changing the label of a base map doesn't mean that it's going to change every single label in the base map. So if you zoom in too much to a street in Spain, you're not going to find, if you set the language to Spanish, it's not going to say calle, which is the way we say in Spanish. It will still say streets. So what is being changed is normally the name of the major cities, countries, and so on. I just wanted to make that clear. We also have the ability to add places on top of some base maps, but we are going to show today how you can include base maps on any base map. That's going to be my first demo, actually. And then we have the possibility to set the world view parameters to change some of the boundaries that are under dispute. But before I go into my demo, I think I'll you're going to show us a few other things.
Yeah, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of resources, and we also want to cover a few things that have that are new actually with the Basemap services. So first things first, developer guide is the main source to go to for basically all the services and to learn about them. So this section under mapping and Basemap layers is brand new. It was completely rewritten this year, so it has all kinds of concepts. So if you're new to Basemaps and you're just trying to get your head wrapped around it all and trying to look at the different options that are available, I highly encourage you to visit this chapter and it'll kind of secure all that information for you. You can get at all of the apps too as well. You can get to the code pan for any of the apps that you see. So if there's something you like, you can grab it. We don't hide any of the code and so forth. This is an interesting page. So just underneath the intro page is types of. So, and a question that I get a lot is like, what's the difference between the ArcGIS Basemap style service, which serves vector tiles and styles, as we know, or we may know, and the ArcGIS static Basemap tile service, which just serves raster tiles. And so what is the difference? So I wrote this app, it's in the guide, and you guys can play with it. And it's kind of showing you the difference in the behavior of WebGL rendering. So right now we're looking at the raster version. Now we'll change to WebGL rendering using vector tiles. So you can see that the label rendering is a lot more smooth. And you can also just navigate through like all the different other styles just to see, okay, what is navigation going to look like as an example for the vector tile service versus the raster tile service, because you may have a use case where you need to use I keep calling it the raster tile service, but it's really ArcGIS static tile service where the rasters are being provided to you as styles. And that can be used like in low bandwidth areas. So if you have folks that are going to be in very low bandwidth, or they have devices that can only utilize low bandwidth, sometimes it's very useful. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you are these mini playgrounds. So if you dig into the intro section for each of these style services, well, the first one's the Basemap style service, then you can use this little interactive application here, and I have it blown up a little bit here so we can see it, so it's running local. And what you can do is you can exercise the parameters that are required to tell the service to give you the style back that you want. So first of all, I'm going to ask for the styles because you can get web maps too back if you want those. We can change from the different families from ArcGIS to open. We'll leave navigation there. And since Raul already let the cat out of the bag here, I'm going to turn on places just to show you how places can really change a map. Now, that's only possible for the styles that support that particular parameter. So you can grab this from this little widget at the bottom. I know you guys can't see it, but just trust me, you can copy the code, you can drop this in your application, and it will accumulate all of the path parameters and the query parameters that you have. The last one I'll show you is the open style family. This is the most recent style family set that we have to the static Basemap tile service. So this one has, if you're familiar with OSM, then this should ring a bell, and you can see how the style is dramatically different. But it's provided with the vector tile service as well as the static Basemap tile service. Lots of language there. Okay, the last piece I wanted to show you, so these are these little playgrounds that you can use, is this Basemap usage page. So this is a little spoiler alert and a little self-promotion, but at 5:30 today, I'm going to go through this whole application here and where we talk about using different usage models. And usage model is how you're billed for consuming Basemaps. Okay, and as you can see, there's lots of different things going on here. If I put something like, we're familiar with maybe Home Springs, zoom into that, you can see it's counting all of the interactions and the tiles that were required to be consumed to do the drawing. And as you can see, in a lot of cases, it actually is just sharing the tiles, right? So you can render the styles any way you want. And in other cases, it's actually going to pull in more tiles because in this case, it's pulling in raster data as well as vector tile data on top of that. Okay, so I'm going to go through all of that later on today, but I wanted just to give you a sneak peek. So hopefully you guys are a little bit more comfortable with the main developer resources that we have available for you. And I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, an important point I want to make on this last demo on the sessions, that's only applicable for applications that are using ArcGIS location platform, because as all of you know, if you're using ArcGIS online, this concept doesn't apply. Just to make sure you're not being charged for those base maps.
That's a good point. It's a great point.
Okay, now just wanted to show you an idea I think is worth sharing is with the places on the base map. One thing you can do in addition to filter those places based on the category and whatever you want, you can also make them be smarter in a way of making the base map be more time aware or context aware. So one thing I was showing here is how you can change not only the base map itself, but how, for example, in the mornings you can see coffee shops, and maybe in the afternoon you hide the coffee shops and you show like the restaurants, right? So you can go to that level of customization to make those base map more useful and more context aware. So I just wanted to throw that idea.
And that's all client side too.
Yeah.
So you make those filters that apply to the types of places that are being displayed, and it's all client side. The server's not involved at that particular point.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to show you a demo of an application I built where I'm going to customize the base map. So let me show you the app instead of the screenshot there. So this is an application that simulates, another spoiler alert, another session I'm doing today. So this is simulating an application from a telco company where I'm using MapLibre. This base map is taking a building's footprint layer that I extracted from OSM, so attribution to the great guys that are contributing to the OSM. And I took that vector layer and I extruded the vector layer in this case. So I'm going to show you how I take this application and how I add a custom source. So if you know, when you are in the vector tile style editor, one style normally starts with one source, but you can add your own custom data if you want. So I'm going to show you very quickly how to do that. So first, I'm going to show you another application that will be on the resources shared later that I built to help you find useful layers that you can use to build your beautiful maps. So I have been digging on all the John Nelson's web maps and took a lot of the cool stuff he has here. So for example, if you search for texture, you will find a lot of texture information you can put on layers you can put on top of your base map. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the places reference layer. So it's only the places information. And I'm going to make the light gray canvas that doesn't support places by default as a parameter, and I'm going to merge both in one style. So I have here the places reference layer. I just need to open that. I have already opened some tabs to save some time. I'm going to merge it with a light gray canvas. So if you go here to a vector tile style editor, let me increase a little bit the font size. Probably you have heard or seen, and if you haven't, there is a possibility in here to edit the JSON. And when you are inspecting the JSON, as I was saying, here you have the source of information that is being used for this layer. So how do you add another source? Right now, vector tile style editor do not implement an interface to do it, so you need to know the Mapbox V8 version 8 specification and how it works. But because I'm too lazy, I decided to build a tool that hopefully will work, because it was kind of live coded. So we'll see what happens here. So it's another tool that will be available in the resources. So the only thing you have to do in here is just paste the item ID of the layer you want to include. And with this tool, I'm going to be able to bring layers from another vector style and merge together and get the JSON that I need to put back in the vector tile style editor. So here you can see all the layers that are coming on that style. So let me bring the light gray item ID. I will click inspect. Now, because the source is the same name of the other source, I have to change the source ID here. And you can see it's bringing all the layers that are on the light gray canvas. You can select in here which of the layers you want to include. I'm going to leave them all And now, this is now merged both styles into one. But you can see it looks pretty ugly. And the reason is that I'm adding the light gray on top of the reference layer. So I need to change the order because there are so many layers in here. If there weren't less, you can drag and drop here in the interface, and that will give you, because here under view JSON, you will get the JSON back. But because this is so large, I have to download this one in particular. Let me open. I'm going to do a little bit of a manual edit.
It's not uncommon to have 8,000 lines of styling code in some of these Basemap styles. So that's like the size of what data we're moving back and forth.
And for reference, I realized after the fact that these actually are the same sources, but this will apply with a different source, right? So in this case, I'm going to leave it there. I will cross my fingers. And I'm going to take from the land, which is the first layer on the light gray. I'm going to take from here to the bottom of the specification. I'm going to remove that, and then I'm going to place all these layers. So that's the way I'm going to rearrange the layers. And now I'm going back to the vector tile style editor. I'm going to replace it in here. And again, I'm going to cross my fingers. Nothing is broken, because that's the issue when you do this sometimes. Okay, now. Where is Palm Springs? Okay. Here you see now I have the light gray canvas with the reference layer on top of it. So here I could make as many changes as I want. I'm going to do a very simple change. So I'm going to edit, not by color, I think it's which you see, oh my God, I increased the font size so much that I don't find what I'm looking for now. Okay, here, sorry. I will change to monochrome. I have a blue color on my notes here to make it look same way that we were seeing in the end result. And of course, then from here you can start doing as many changes as you want, but the way you can now bring a vector tile with a custom source into your Basemap is as simple as, with MapLibre in particular, you have to save it, and then you will need to scope this vector tile with a developer credential. Even if it's not going to be charged, the way the MapLibre plugin works require to take the item ID of this style and go to your API key. In my case, I'm using this developer credential. This is a public application that requires item access. And then I need to scope that new custom style. Next, I have the reverse geocoder set. You should set or refer URLs to make sure that no one can use your credential except for you. And now we're ready to go. The only thing we need to do is to regenerate our API key. And now from the code, here I'm going to place the API key, the new API key. And what I need to do is to change the base style to the new item ID I just created. And by doing that, my application should be now rendering the new Basemap. So we have seen very quickly how you can modify a vector style and apply multiple sources. I was telling Al before that I have been always wondering how I could build a festival map, a music festival map, and add like all the different areas and the resting areas and so on. So it could be a nice way to have a Basemap and add your operational data published as a vector layer and embedded that in here.
The concept is similar to a web map. We're basically using the Basemap style as a container of JSON, and we're adding another source to it for a data service that you have or a data layer somewhere else. So it's not exactly a base map, but it's along the same lines and concept.
Okay, and I think we're going to start getting into the most beautiful part of the session. So thank you for staying with us until this point. So it's about blending and effects, and this is very specific to the JavaScript SDK, as probably you know, and this is very specific to the 2D because effects doesn't work the same way in 2D than in 3D. So just to make sure everyone is on the same page, these are just some effects you can apply also from the map viewer. That's, I would say, is our developer tool that you can use as a playground. Probably you have seen this many times, but in case you haven't, there is an interface that we are going to be using where on the right side where we're going to be applying these styles to the map. And then before I get into some of the resources we have compiled for you, because we wanted this session to be a great session to give you as many resources as you can so you can research and do cool things in the future. So we're going to see a few techniques to apply to our base maps to make them shine. So the first thing is the easy one to do this color shift. For example, we did change it into a monochrome style or applying desaturation and a hue effect. We're going to see a little bit of that to give the base map a different mood, a different tone, and match your brand colors. Then, of course, desaturating any base map will help a lot to make the data to stand up on top of it. Then with the blending effects, especially taking things like textures and taking hill shades, will also help us incredibly to make the base map look very different. And we are going to see that also in a couple of examples now. Applying those glow effects, as you notice in this particular image, is not only applying a glow effect on a selected area, but it's also desaturating everything around it. So it make more like popping that area. Then you can also apply masks. Like in Photoshop, you can remove everything in an area, surrounding an area. You can leave all the boundaries that you want the user to stay focusing. So there are some examples where you can, if you're interested, we are not going to show this particular demo, but I'm going to show you where that demo is. So you can reproduce the same. This other effect is another effect that John Nelson created. This is the portrait effect, is how he called it. It's applying some blur, but it's kind of that focus lens that you can add into an area by adding another layer on top of the area you want to be focusing on. Then there is something that we are going to see right now in another demo is how you can apply shadows to the buildings and to the streets to make them elevate from the map, which will give it another feeling. And then there are plenty of examples where you can take all these different techniques and combine them in different ways. So I'm really excited on what are the things that can be done and you will be able to do after this session with some of these ideas. So before we keep going with one more slide, before we keep going with the demo. So this is just to illustrate that idea that I was saying with a base map that have several layers. And this is how the process kind of works. So you start by adding one layer, right? Like in this case, the original imagery. Then you start applying effects. Like for example, you can invert that layer to make it look a little bit different. Then you apply a second effect to that same layer, like adding a hue rotation to change a little bit the colors of that layer. Then you increase the brightness, making it still more different. And then you add a new layer. In this case, it's a hill shade. By adding the hill shade and applying the multiply blending effect, you can get a totally different result and give that feeling that it's even 3D when it's not 3D, because we are adding that elevation layer. And if you want to make that even better, you can play around with other effects like the blur effect. So this is the concept. The only thing to keep in mind when building an application, because these things looks really good, but keep in mind that you will have to load more layers and that's going to affect the performance of the application. And you will see sometimes tiles loading. So use them carefully. That being said, I have a demo recording because I wanted to save as much time as possible to show you many more things. So here is the example where I'm going to the Living Atlas. I'm searching for textures. I already showed you a different tool, but you can search many of these assets in the Living Atlas. I'm opening a base map with that layer already on top of it. And now, what I'm going to be doing is to start applying different effects to different layers. So I'm focusing on an area where I'm going to start by adding a little bit of, I want to add the oceans base layer to add a little bit of bathymetry to the water, because it was a little bit plain. So again, I encourage you to play around with these things. This is what I was experimenting with. But then from here, you can see now it's a different result. The look and feel is slightly different. Again, the multiply effect normally plays very well with me. I'm not so versed on many other blending effects. But then, for example, you're going to start using this brightness and contrast effect to make the colors of the oceans map not affect that much to my layer. Now I'm moving that operational layer to my base layers, because I want to group them all in the Basemap layer. And then there you can start rearranging elements. And the way you arrange elements and you apply effects is going to make things look very different. So here now I wanted to add a little bit of shadows to the buildings. So I went to the details, the human geography details layer, and by applying those shadows and playing around with the parameters, with the opacity and with the width and with the position of the shadows, I was able to have a different look and feel with this map, right? It's like, okay, now let's try to change even the colors of those buildings with the hue saturation and the sepia. Combining those, you can play around with the colors and make that look also a little bit different. Then you can apply also these effects to the labels, add some drop shadows. That I don't find that a great idea all the time, because make the labels not so readable. But I mean, probably you have a better taste than I do. So experiment and keep playing with all these effects. Here I was just trying to fix a small problem with this blue color. You can notice that in the water there are some, I don't know if you can notice in the projector, but it wasn't very smooth, the color progression. So I just added the grayscale, and that fixed my issue with the Basemap. So this is kind of the idea of building these layer sandwiches. And this is what you can see if you follow John Nelson and this Kina and these guys. They are all the time creating really beautiful maps and sharing them with the community. And many times you can explore those to get ideas on how they are achieving these results. So now I'm going to show you one demo, because we have seen, okay, this is a map viewer, but we are in the developer summit. So I'm going to show you the developer way of achieving the same results. That's going to be, and for that, I think probably the resource that you will like the most, hopefully, or at least is the one that I'm probably more proud of, it's not so crazy, but I think it's very useful, is this other application, which is actually just a gallery of the most beautiful base maps I could find from John and other people. I encourage you, if you have any base map that I'm not including here, to let me know. The thing is that by clicking on any of these base maps, you are going to be able to see them in action here. Let me go to the deep blue one. It's another one that I like a lot from John Nelson. From here, you can click under Map Viewer, and that's going to open the item ID, so you can explore how that was built. But that's going to require you to go layer by layer, checking with which effects and blending modes were applied to the base map. So I just wanted to give you a short, an easy button here that, in addition to give you the JavaScript SDK code to load that web item ID, you can also click on manually, and there you are gonna get the JavaScript SDK code to reproduce the same style and manually. And the cool thing here is that this is another shortcut to see which are the layers that, I don't know if you can see properly, which are the layers that have been added, which are the effects and blending modes and scale ranges and everything that has been applied to each of them. And yeah, you can use this in your code if you want, instead of having, I know this is easier, but I know this is the funnier way of doing things. And you can go directly I've created a very simple scaffolding app with the JavaScript SDK 5.0. So it's very, very simple, just a placeholder loading map view. Then I'm pasting all the code that I grabbed from that tool. If I go here, you see this is running locally. I was able to achieve the same result that John Nelson was creating with the web map, but directly in code. So that's also fun because it will help you also to better understand how you can even on the client side be changing these parameters, even if you want to make that context-aware map, like changing a little bit the colors of this base map during the day and during the night. So you can play around with a lot of parameters in here.
So basically you decomposed a web map and then composed the JavaScript code to create that same style.
Exactly. Thank you. Yep. Like I said, it's about that. Yeah, I just parsed the web map specification, was meaningful to me. I just created the equivalent JavaScript SDK code. Okay, another quick tip that I heard recently, I have never think about this, is how you can make your satellite base map to look a little bit better, or how I feel it look a little bit better, is just by increasing the saturation. Just by touching the saturation values, which is as simple as adding a few lines of code in your application, will make the base map, I think, look sometimes better. So I just wanted to share that quick tip to you. And another thing I heard from Mark Harrower, which is the author of many of these styles I share on the gallery, is that we need to keep in mind that when playing around, designing our base maps at one zoom scale, we might achieve a good result, but then when you scale back or zoom in or zoom out, the result might not be great. So just the same way we have on the vector tile style editor, this multiple view, where you can see every time you make a change, how that's affecting all zoom levels. There is another tool that I shared on the repo where you can do the same thing with a web map. So you can easily explore your web map at different zoom levels. And now we are going to be ending up in here, but very quickly, 3D mapping application, it's a totally different story. We already show as much as we could, but there are a couple of things that are worth to be mentioned. So in addition to adding those 3D building layers, playing around with that, and these are the kind of the simple things to do if you're not well versed in 3D. You can also, of course, use the symbology that is provided, making the water to move and so on. But one thing I wanted to play around the other day was I want to make a tourist maps with landmarks. I want to take the 3D buildings layer. I want to apply some mask. I want to add some 3D models. So I just made an application that, again, is shared on the repo that allows you to easily go there, create a mask, download the JSON with the mask that you need to apply to the layer to make sure that you remove that building for the 3D buildings layer, and allows you to bring any 3D model you can download from any open source. There are a lot of directories with open models out there. And with this tool, you can also move the model wherever you want. And you can also download all the modification parameters to be able to place that model in the right location. Here, I'm just doing a little bit of playing a little bit with the transparency of the buildings to make it also, well, it's kind of a similar thing that Al did right at the beginning. And by doing this process, I was able to, in a few minutes, when I had the application built, to be able to create this application from Paris with some of the different, I removed the kind of ugly 3D buildings. I replaced them with better looking 3D models of I could be, of course, much better. I just wanted to show another idea on how you can maybe use this thing.
So where do we find those models, Rahul?
Yeah, you just search on Google for open, free to download, Creative Commons models, and there is a Sketchfab. And in the repo, there is also some links with the models I use, and there are some directories where you can explore. Yeah, this is another example. I was like, why not? Why not to add some clouds to our 3D scene so we make it more real. So there's another code sample that is on the repo that you can explore how you can achieve this. I just took the clouds from NASA and placed it there. Maybe it's not the most performant thing in the world. I didn't spend too much time improving the performance, but I think it looks nice. You can do kind of maybe a similar thing in 2D when you're too far away and maybe disable clouds optionally or whatever. And lastly, the thing I wanted to show you is, because I have been looking to do this for so long time, is how you can take the Google 3D photorealistic layers in the JavaScript SDK, not the one that were presented on the plenary, which are coming from the Living Atlas. So this is directly coming from the Google Maps API, and how you place those 3D photorealistic layers here, and have all the power of the JavaScript SDK components. So you can start like adding these weather effects, and you can start measuring things, and you can do everything you do with any 3D. You can apply masks and remove areas of the building. So you are not going to imagine how easy it is to do this. So I'm going to give 5 more seconds so you can see, okay, it works the same way as any other one. This is what you need. So you just need to load an integrated mesh 3D tiles layer. You need to point out to the endpoint from Google, which is the one you see there. And you just need to place your Google Maps API key, which you will have to create on the Google console. One thing to keep in mind, if you do this, it's required by the terms of use of Google that you add a Google Maps logo, providing the attribution to them. Because the JavaScript SDK is not aware where the data is coming from. That's something you will have to do yourself. And yeah, there are plenty of more things we could talk about, but we don't have time to cover all of them. There are a lot of cool things that can be done more advanced for 3D. Just wanted to leave a pretty picture of the clouds and splats, the lighting, the focus, the field view, and all this cool stuff. But yeah, I think we need to wrap up. In case you have any questions, just some of the things to keep in mind is, yeah, JavaScript SDK is really powerful to make beautiful base maps and interactive base maps. Yeah, use the power of the layer sandwich whenever it makes sense to you. Add custom sources. There are a lot of things that can be done. I removed some animations because we didn't have time, but if you're interested, let me know. More than happy to share that with any of you. Well, for the recording, I will say I will place all those things also on the video description. If you want to get access to everything we have shown today, yeah, here you have the QR code. Everything on GitHub. If you miss anything, create an issue, ping us, let us know. I hope we didn't forget anything, because there are too many things.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, now we are going to go for the questions. Just a reminder, let us know what you think was more useful, what can we improve, what you were missing. We take this very seriously. We have training before every developer summit where they are sharing your feedback with us so we can improve our sessions. In addition to get your direct feedback anonymized so we can understand. Another thing, sorry, before the questions, I'm very excited about this one. We now have an Esri developers account on LinkedIn that was announced last week. Well, in case you are on LinkedIn or you're active there, I invite you to join us. We are present on many other places. So yeah, any questions?
Can you please go back to our program?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, this is one of the things they tell us when they are giving the training. Leave the QR code time enough so people have time to scan it. Sorry, I thought it was enough. Any other question?
What happens if you don't put the Google logo on?
What happens if you don't put the logo on? Well, I hope you don't get in trouble, but I guess they could potentially reach out. Yeah, I wouldn't challenge them. Nothing else? Okay, thank you very much for joining. We will be around, so ping us if you need us.
Thank you.